Alright, Shalom. First and foremost of all praise, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Merkah HaKwadash, the Bronze Apostles, and other bishops, a great millstone teaching us more saying truth according to the Bible and rule well, and peace and blessings to afflict the nation of Israel, take their spirit and power of Yahweh Shai, willing it to the Lord's willing edifying lesson. Today's lesson, I'm just really turning on the recorder. I had some time. I'm at the job right now. But, Spirit was on me to think. I was meditating on prayer, and when I opened up, I was actually in Matthew, the 6th chapter. That's what, it opened me up to, right? And we'll start at verse 6. Right, Matthew chapter 6, verse 6 is, but when thou prayest, enter into thy closet. And that was the closet is like a secret place, the secret place, of your mind. We can pray, anywhere. I was actually in the car, I was driving down the road, and I started saying some prayers, the Lord, be with me. And as soon as I looked to the left, I saw a license plate 144. I was just like, so I was like, that's so, that's cool, right? That's the Lord, it's Yahweh Shai, showing us that He's with us. The Lord is already, on our side. And these demons, they try to make you, think otherwise. Satan, his job is to try our faith. To try whether or not we're going to curse the Most High and die, as we read about it in the book of Job. So we should be constantly praying, in our minds, right? We're meditating upon, and asking the Lord to hasten His coming, to speed up the days, as this kingdom is just completely through. Only reason why we're still surviving, the only reason why we're head over the water is because Yahweh Shai is keeping us afloat, and the things that we're going through now is teaching us how to handle uncertainty, how to exercise patience in our walk, right? It says, but thou, when thou prayest, enter thou into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to the Father, right? So we're praying to Yahweh Shai, which is in secret, and the Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly, right? And the Lord is showing a favor, towards His men, now 6 years later, that number 6, right? Because we're going to get victory over this man. The prophets of Yahweh Shai were, making it known, not to trust your enemy. Now I'm seeing all these old clips of the C-19, pop back up. So it's showing you that, people are, realizing that they were duped, right? I know, I read a comment. It was like, it was like a caption on the video. It was like, this thing was pushed so hard. Now nobody talks about it like it never happened. And, I've always, noticed that, when you talk to people, nobody ever talks about the C-19. No one ever talks about the scamdemic. It's almost like people want to forget it. They want to forget. They don't want to ever experience like that, something like that ever again. And we're warning you that it's going to be something much worse, that's going to happen next. And you're going to need a healthy relationship with Yahweh Shai, to get through it. And that starts with us praying to the Lord, right? By praying to the Lord, right? Here in real quick, where is it? Where's the book of Psalms? I believe it's 55. I believe it's chapter 55. Let me see where we're at. This is Psalm chapter 55, verse 22. It says, cast thy burden upon the Lord. So whatever burdens, the thoughts that are most heavy onto thee, rent is due. It's the 5th, by the way, right? Rent is due. you know, or this light bill's due, or this, you know, how am I gonna, make money here, and, you know, how am I gonna do this or that, you know, and we have to learn how to be still and to let go of the need to have a surety of things. You know, our surety, you know, the proof is that the Yahweh Shema Shai is real, right? The proof that everything is going to be all right, stuff, you know, is, you know, he is, right? You know, that is the proof. You know, our faith is the proof, the evidence of things not seen, right? So we have to exercise faith in our prayers. When thou prayest, believe, you know, you should have these things and you shall receive them. So we got to believe that our prayers are being answered, right? You can't doubt, you know, for who, you know, whatsoever is not of faith is sin. You know, so, you know, these Israelites talking about the law, you have to measure yourself. Dang, did I show a lack of faith? You know, in this situation, you know, have I been lacking faith in that situation? It was my, you know, my mindset and my reasoning when I'm put into these different trials and tribulations. Because with Yahweh Shema Shai, there is mercy. It says, cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved. Why? Because we're founded upon a rock, Yahweh Shai. And the Lord is showing us that us mortal men in these bodies, you know, in this corruptible flesh, you know, as much as we want to be perfect, you know, as much as we, of course, we're God's chosen, you know, we're the sons of God, you know, we're the chosen, and we're in a very privileged position, you know, to have this truth. But we must also remain very humble, you know, realizing that we ourselves are not enough, and it's only through Yahweh Shai. You know, he was the man that did it for us. You know, the Son of God, right? He walked as a man down here upon the earth, you know, going through the same infirmities that we're going through, you know, and worse, right? He was a man acquainted with grief, you know, so, and he prayed, you know, Yahweh Shai prayed. He constantly prayed. Let me get this. King David prayed, right? Let me just type in morning. I know it's Psalms, the 5th chapter, but I want to see if the one in what the fuck? Sorry. Morning. I want to see if the one in Matthew's. I believe it's like Mark, maybe. Let me see. Damn. Jake done realized the whole Bible got morning in it. In the morning, it's foul weather. Let me see what Mark says. In the morning, yep, Mark, the water Yahweh Shema Shai. Mark 1:35. And in the morning, rising up a great while before day, he went out and departed into a solitary place and there prayed. You know, brothers get out, you know, in the morning, go for a daily walk, you know, early in the morning, depending on your schedule. I know when I was working, you know, daytime, I'd leave the house around 7. I'll, you know, wake up around 5, you know, get my, eat a little bit, you know, something light, you know, something to activate my digestive system, some Greek yogurt, you know, fruit, you know, drink some water, hydrate, and I would stretch. You know, I'll go for a walk first, or I'll go for a walk because I was still a little doozy. You know, meditate a little bit, take a little lap around the apartment complex. And yeah, and I'll come back and do my stretching. And while I was walking, you know, do some meditation, you know, and pray, you know, to Yahweh Shema Shai, right? And get the mind ready for the day. You know, sometimes you might, you know, start a lesson. You know, it's good to have a morning routine. You know, Yahweh Shai had a morning routine. We're reading it right here. You know, so it's good for brothers who work in the morning to wake up earlier. You know, and that'll help you and allow you, if you get off your phone, right, allow you to go to sleep earlier too, right? You gotta wind down, right, after that long day in the heat. You gotta wind down. You gotta wind down. Right at night, you gotta stay off the phone. Right, you gotta cool off because your body temperature is all hot. You know, you gotta get ready. You just gotta, you gotta relax. You know, I know brothers who work outside, you be all tense. You know, feel like, just your mind racing. Yeah. But this is a Mark 1:35. In the morning, rising up a great while before the day, he went out and departed into a solitary place, and there prayed. You know, so we have to take on that same, mindset. Rising up early to pray. Pray to Yahweh Shema Shai before we even start, our day. Before we, and these things must be done to overcome this flesh. You're struggling, but it must be done. We're reading it. Yahweh Shai gave us the blueprint. This is something that we must implement into our lives, into our day, and do it. When you do this for 3, 6 months, a year, watch how your relationship with Yahweh Shema Shai grows exponentially. You won't have those, what are they called? Them big swings in your portfolio. No, it's going to be exponential growth. All right, and that's what we're looking for. This is Psalms 5:3. Verse 2, hearken unto the voice of my cry, my King and my God, for unto thee will I pray. My voice shalt thou hear in the morning, O Yahweh Shema Shai. In the morning will I direct my prayer unto thee, and I will look up, right? Full of hope, full of an expectation of deliverance. Matthew 6:7. I'm gonna jump down a little bit. I'm pretty much pressed on time. That's pretty much all the time I really got. But Matthew 6:8, it says, "Be not ye therefore like unto them." Verse 9, right? Verse 9 says, "After this manner pray ye therefore, our Father," right? And the brothers have the Lashon Kodash, the Paleo Hebrew, the other one pull out the Lord's Prayer, in the Lashon Kodash, up. I know Apostle Ramlop has on this channel. I know the brother Inspiration of the Most High, I have it saved, one of his older channels. One of the brothers out there in LA did it. And you write it down, right? And you can remember it, by writing it down. One way I remembered it, I would I do line by line, so it's a couple lines. Read the one line, so I was able to say everything. And I would read the one line and then incorporate the second line, and then so I was able to do that and so forth onto the first, second, and then third line again. That was one way I was really able to remember. And then you talk to a brother, about it. Maybe practice with a brother. Maybe I both practice it together. But it says, "After this manner therefore pray ye, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." Right? I believe Apostle Ramlop has it as an old video on his channel. I know the LA Ashwamba has on his channel. Remnant Save 144. The GMS Inspiration of the Almighty, I've seen on his channel. The elder from DC. Oh man, what the GMS Spiritual Army? I believe it's GMS Spiritual Army. It's been a while. I'm pretty sure he has it on his channel. Or hop on the comment board and you can always ask him. GMS Spiritual Army 144, I believe is the channel name. I know one of his, it was like 18 maybe or something. It's been a while, forgive me. I saw this video popped up on my feed. I just don't remember the channel exactly. But yeah, the elder from DC, the elder Monaghan, you can get it from his channel, right? And there's a lot of ways. Lord's willing, I'm actually gonna put a link in the description, to it, so brothers can have it. Apparatus up. I can look it up. It says, "After this manner therefore pray ye, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as is in heaven, right? So that's what we want. We want righteousness to, and we want to order, we want the commands that's going on in the heavens that establish the righteousness that's in the heaven to be established down here upon the earth. How all creatures obey Yahweh Shema Shai. That's a beautiful thing. We want that, right? We want that to happen down here upon the earth. Every knee shall bow, and every tongue shall confess that Yahweh Shai Mashiach, that He is Lord. It says, "Give us this day our daily bread," right? So the Lord is, feeding us with food convenient onto us, giving us what we need, right? Rather us have these extracurricular activities, we'll pray for her. Pray, so they can do these different extracurricular activities. If you want to, do some type of, therapy, cold therapy, hot therapy, get a massage, do some yoga, that costs money, but you pray to the Lord, to be able to do those things. Really, you can do a lot of that stuff at home, for cheap. You got a bathtub, fill that bitch up. Excuse my French, I'm a little all over the place, but I'm all over the place, forgive me, but we're about to wrap it up. It's just praying more, praying to Yahweh Shema Shai, honestly, and asking the Lord to guide you and to forgive you, for, our shortcomings, because we constantly are falling short. We're constantly falling short, but the Lord's mercy truly does endure forever. As long as that we have, there's a quote, all a man needs are the guts, to never give up. If you know, so that's our mindset. But let me go ahead and wrap this up, because I gotta go. The Lord's willing to edify through His Spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai. You can read the rest of this chapter. It says, "Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil." And that's a really important, that's why you want to say this prayer every single day. We need to make sure that we're on the path that, that escapes the temptation, that's constantly before us. It says, "But deliver us from evil, for thine is the kingdom and power and glory forever. Amen." We used to actually say this prayer down here in the South after football practice. I didn't know what we were saying, I just remember, the coach will always have a close out, and I was like, yo, that's a cool speech. That's a dope speech. I don't know how he made that up. That must be some football stuff. But yeah, we used to always say the Lord's Prayer, after every practice and after every game. But yeah, so Lord's willing, pray that edify through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai. Continue to stay prayed up. Continue to examine ourselves. And we're very close, so continue the fight. Give it all you got. Take someone to say Shalom.